Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to work on lesson 2, comparing rational and irrational numbers. We're going to break this lesson down into 2 separate days because it's kind of a lot. So when we compare numbers, we can compare them on a number line. We can compare them by arranging them from greatest to least or least to greatest. And we also can compare them using inequalities. If you remember, the alligator eats the bigger number. Okay, so that's what we're working on today.
All right, so we're in the Learning from Home folder. We're going to go down to the week of 5/4/2020. We are on lesson 2, part 1. You can click on your notes right here, or you can go through today's plan and click on the notes from there. And this is what your notes should look like for today. So it says we are going to be comparing rational and irrational numbers. Our learning target is I can compare rational and irrational numbers using a number line, ordering techniques, and inequalities. So when we compare numbers, we look at which numbers are larger and which numbers are smaller. We often do this comparison using a number line. So taking a look at this first number line we have, by the way, if you are working on the paper copy, it is slightly different than the Google Docs version, just because it's really hard to type with Google Docs on a number line. So it says, let's compare the following numbers to identify which point goes with each number. Hopefully, this isn't too challenging. So our first number is negative 2.5. So negative 2.5 is where B is. I want you to pause the video right now and fill in the rest of those. Tell me where each number falls and what letter it corresponds to. Okay, check your work with my work. Like I said, hopefully that wasn't too challenging. It's going to be the same idea for comparing rational and irrational numbers. Okay, so we'll get to some examples down when we get to some more practice. The other way that we are going to compare rationals and irrational numbers today is through inequalities. So we can also compare numbers. I'm right here reading from your notes. We can also compare numbers using inequalities. Remember that inequalities are symbols that show bigger and larger numbers. Right here, that's the symbol for less than. So what I usually show is there's a little trick that this right here, that's the less than symbol. Okay, kind of looks like an L for less than. Okay, so you can kind of keep that in mind. Over here is greater than. There's no real trick to that. The other trick that I like to use is the alligator analogy. Looks like an alligator mouth. Alligator's always going to want to eat the bigger number. So this here, it says negative 2.5 is less than 4. Makes sense? It's a negative number. Then we have negative 6 is greater than negative 10. Be careful with negative numbers. Remember, the more negative it is, the smaller it is. So even though you might look at this and be like, hey, 10 is bigger than 6. Yeah, positive 10 is bigger than positive 6. But when you think of negatives, it has that opposite effect. So now it says, now you try, fill in the blanks with the correct inequality. So pause the video and write the correct inequality in each blank. To write these inequalities using a keyboard, you're going to press Shift and then the period button or Shift and comma, depending on which inequality you're going to use. So pause the video and fill in those next 2 examples. Okay, you can check your work with my work. These both are going to be greater than. As I mentioned again, be careful with negative numbers. The more negative they are, the smaller they are. We can also compare numbers by ordering them from least to greatest. This is the last method for ordering. So order the numbers, the following numbers from greatest to least. Now, if you notice, all of these numbers so far have been pretty simple to work with. They've been integers or decimal numbers. We're going to get to rationals and irrationals, more complex numbers in a little bit. Okay, so order the following numbers from greatest to least. So greatest is starting. So I like to go through my numbers and find the biggest number. We got 4, negative 10 is definitely not it. 1, 3.5, negative 8, negative 8.5, and 0. So it looks like 4 is going to be my biggest number. So I'm going to write that down first. Put a comma in between them. Now, if this was on paper, I would be crossing these out as I go. Since we don't have paper right now, what I'm going to do, I could either delete it, or since I don't want to delete the whole problem for me personally, I'm just going to put, let's see, we'll bold it when we're done with it. So 4 is done. The next largest number would be 3.5. All right, finish this on your own, and then, so pause the video, finish it on your own, then unpause or play and check your work. All right, check your work with my work. Again, be careful with those negative numbers. All right, so we practiced comparing numbers that we should already be used to, and now we're just gonna throw in some more complex numbers. So rational and irrational numbers. So it says identify which point goes with each number. So we're working with a number line first. So before we do that, what I suggest you do is convert each number to the same format. So like I see fractions in here, I see square roots in here, I see decimals in here. Up to you how you want to convert it, but I honestly think that decimals are a really easy way of comparing numbers. So for this first one, we've got 2 1/4. You might already know this. Let's see, where can I put this? Google Docs is a little weird with formatting, but I'm just going to write underneath it. So I know this is going to say 2.3. 2 1/4. You can use your calculator. Use that. Let's see, what button was it? I think it's ABC. Nope. Let me test it here. It is ABC. So on your scientific calculator, if you have one, 2 ABC, 1 ABC, 4 ABC. Oh, just kidding. Ignore that last ABC. I'm a mess right now. Press enter and it should say 2 1/4, then press second PRB. You might know this without even using a calculator, but this is 2.25. Square root of 16. Okay, we want to convert, we want to convert that to a regular number. So let's take the square root of 16 and we should get 4. Negative 2.3 is just negative 2.3. Negative 2 1/4 is going to be the same as 2 1/4, except it's just negative. And then negative 4 halves, or negative 4 divided by 2, easy simplify to negative 2. So now that they're all in the same form, it's going to be a lot easier to mark up where these numbers fall. Okay, so 2.3 is going to be at 2 and then a little bit further. Now there's another one right before it. So take a second there's E and F right here, and A and B for that matter, but we're working with positive numbers right now, are really close to each other. So take a look at your numbers and try to figure out which numbers are really close to each other. Hopefully you're seeing it's this 2.3 and the 2.25. Now when we compare decimals, I like to stack the decimals right on top of each other, like line up the decimal points. You'll see what I mean in a second. And this will become easier or more important when we do some more examples. And you just read your decimals from left to right. You can fill in the blanks with zeros. 2 and 2, those are the same number, so those don't help us. 3 and 2, that right there tells us which one's bigger. Okay, the 3 is bigger, therefore 2.3 is going to be bigger. So 2.3 is the one that's further past the 2, so that's going to be F. So hopefully that makes 2 1/4 or 2.25 easier to read, which is E. Square root of 16 is 4, so that's going to be G. Okay, now working backwards here, we're working with negatives now, okay? So which one is the most negative? Negative 2.3 is the most negative, so that's going to be the one that's farthest to the left. So that would be A. And then this one would be the next one, coming up, getting greater. And then C will be our last one, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the next one. Next one's a little bit trickier, and you're going to see why in my first example. So like I mentioned, I like to, this is just my preferred way of doing things. If you have a way that's better and it works for you, then do that. Okay, but I like to get all of my numbers in the same form. So the first number I see is the square root of 2. Let's type it into our calculators, square root of 2. And you'll see it is not a pretty number at all. but we are just trying to identify the approximate value so we can look at it on a number line and see which one's going to make the most sense. So this is an irrational number. It goes on forever and has no pattern. It's about 1.4142. I'll stop there. Okay, let's look at 5 over 2. We'll simplify that. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. The square root of 4 is 2. 4 is just 4. 2.09 is just 2.09. 17 over 8, let's divide that out. 2.125. And the square root of 9, which is 3. Okay? It might also be helpful for you to pick out the easy, simple whole numbers. Let's do that. So right here, I've got 2, which is the square root of 4. So 2 is right on letter B. 4 would be at G, and 3 would be at F. So now we just have the other ones to fill in. So let's take a look at this first, our square root of 2, which is 1.4142. Approximately, it keeps going. It's an irrational number. So this one, 1.4, would be right around here. And there are no other letters in that area, so we know that that has to be A. Then we have 2.5, which is 5 over 2. That one's pretty clear too. It's right in the middle between 2 and 3. That's going to be E. Looks like it's just these last 3 numbers that are really going to be kind of tricky. Okay, last 2 numbers, sorry. That's C and the D. So we are looking at C and D, trying to figure out which one's bigger. So again, I strongly recommend you writing out the decimals and lining up the decimals. So we got 2.09, and then we got 2.125. Okay, 2's don't tell us anything, they're the same number. Right here is where it tells you which one is bigger. So it's the 2.125. So when looking at our number line, since we're talking positive here, it's going to be the one that is farthest out, and that's going to be D. And the only one remaining is C. Okay, so that's the first half of lesson 2. You can move on to your self-assessment for today. Going into Schoology, you can either access it right into the page right here or on the main week of 5-4 self-assessment page. All right, we'll see you during the next lesson.